Hi, guys. Wanted to respond to your introductions. First off, Andrea, or is it Andrea? I'm asking because we had an exchange student live with us from Spain a few years ago, and her name was Andrea, and she didn't like it pronounced the other way. First off, you're right. Sully was named after the character in Monsters, Inc. and Monsters University. It's a long story, but my youngest daughter really related to that movie, and she'd call me Sully and I'd call her Boo. So it kind of went that way. She's 19 now and doesn't much like to be reminded of this. I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of the thoughts that you had in terms of how you get your news. I might have mentioned that I have a degree in mass communications. My first day in my first class, early in the morning in graduate school, the professor asked us, what is a quality TV program? And we all sat there reaching for these lofty answers like quality TV uplifts the audience or brings us together or informs and enlightens or something like that. And the professor sat there looking at us kind of wryly and finally said, no. Quality TV is the television that creates the largest audience. Boom, a light went off in our heads. And Manny, you probably already know this given your background in news marketing. Television makes its money through advertising. The product of television is not television programming. The product of any mass media is not the content that they create and distribute. The product is your eyeballs. The audience is the product. They take the audience and they sell it to the advertiser who wants to reach that audience. Andrea, the audience. Well, you mentioned that you like Yahoo News because of its mix of entertainment news, general news, and social news. Okay. Now Yahoo's challenge is to match you with an advertiser who has discovered that people who buy their product are people who like general news, entertainment news, and social news. It's really not hard to do. Advertisers spend a hell of a lot of money and time figuring out exactly who their product is for or exactly who their product appeals to and tailoring their messages to that particular audience. So I'm sure that there is no randomness to the ads that you see every morning when you turn on, when you go to Yahoo News, because they know who you are, they know what you like, and they know what you're likely to buy. And that's what they're going to show you. Manny, I was a newscaster once. I did radio at a little place in Rhode Island. And I'm beginning to sound like any number of origin stories of, back in the old days, it all began at this little 5,000 watt radio station in East Overshoe. I remember one day that we had news coming out of our ears. There was a baby killed in an apartment fire. There was a woman killed in a car accident. There was local students who were killed in a dorm fire, if I'm recalling correctly. Long around the time that the nearby nuclear power plant had an explosion that blew a door off of it and nobody knew whether it was radioactive or not, I decided I wasn't quite sure I knew what to lead my next 5-minute newscast with. 5-minute newscast. It was actually 1 minute of network news, 2 minutes of local news, a minute commercial, then sports and weather. So 2 minutes of news. I wander into the station manager's office and ask him. And he says, give the audience what they want. And that was enlightening to me because instead of thinking what is the most important thing for the audience to know about, I had just been told that my job was to deliver the news the audience wanted to hear. So it no longer was a judgment about whether they needed to know about the nuclear power plant that could be spewing radiation across their county. It was they probably wanted to know the latest details about the girls who had been killed in the dorm fire. That kind of turned me off newscasting. I mean, I did it for a little while after that, and found other stations and other places to do it that were a little bit more acceptable to me. And that brings me to the interesting point here. Manny, you're a liberal. The reason I say that is you watch MSNBC. MSNBC is a channel that is skewed specifically to the left side, the liberal side, the Democratic side of the political spectrum. CNN tries to be more or less in the middle. They're kind of center left. And Fox is extreme right, which is neither here nor there. Political opinions have nothing to do with class. But what it does do is it demonstrates that channels intentionally select, produce, and skew their content to appeal to the audience that they want to reach, or the audience that they think they can reach. Fox programs conservative, MSNBC programs liberal. It's called counter-programming. They're trying to pick up the audience that Fox doesn't have or CNN doesn't have. Why? Because they have data that shows that the audience for MSNBC is more likely to be higher educated, more likely to live in cities than in red states, which is why they're red states, more likely to have professional jobs, advanced degrees, all that kind of stuff. And so that's where you can sell products that appeal to or are within the range of that audience, BMWs rather than Chevy trucks. These are all very radical generalizations, but I think they make the point. So where was I going with that? I knew I had a point there somewhere. There's probably going to be an abrupt edit here while I pause and try to figure out what I was talking about. And here's the point of all that. It turns out that we select the content. Don't mind that. It's just the dogs coming through the house. It turns out that we select the content in news that appeals to us. One of the reasons it appeals to us is that it talks about the things we like. In Andrea's case, that might be social goings-on, celebrities, entertainment, news, general news topics. In the case of MSNBC, it turns out that it's interpretation of the current events from a particular perspective. I virtually guarantee you that nobody who watches MSNBC spends a whole lot of time listening to Rush Limbaugh or Fox News. They're not looking for a, in quotes here, fair and balanced take on the day's events. They're looking for one that confirms the expectations, understandings, and biases that they already have. It's called confirmation. And it is very common among audiences. It's one of the ways that people choose what they want to listen to. And it turns out that what they want to listen to is what already confirms, or what is likely to confirm, the biases they already have. Biases are not negative. We all have them. But when you look at it in terms of mass communication and mass marketing, you have to be aware that the source that you choose is going to present information that you want in the way that you like it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's inaccurate, but it is framed, it is positioned, it is set up in a way that conforms, that you're likely to nod your head and say, yep, that's right, they're telling the truth. It turns out the truth is what agrees with what you already think. rather than any objective or fundamental sense of accuracy or right or wrong, at least in terms of mass communication. The point of that is to be aware of the bias of the media that you choose, and to be aware of the biases in the media that you create, because that is going to come through to the audience. That is what's going to reach the audience, motivate them, engage them, and make them either listen to and attend to what you create or not. So that is what I wanted to talk about in terms of editing. I'm sorry, that is what I wanted to talk about in terms of where you get your news and mass communication, things like that. So I will now go off and edit this so that I don't look like a blathering idiot. One additional thing that I want to add is the reason that I did this in video rather than typing it. Well, there were two. One, I started typing it and my computer crashed and I lost it and my hands just didn't want to type it again. The other is that early in a course, I think it's important that we get a sense of each other that goes beyond what we see when we just write to each other. You'll see in my reply to the topic of the week that there's richness and thinness in media, and richness provides better communication, better understanding. You can look at me, you can watch my expressions, you can watch my hands, you can look at the background behind me, see the coffee cup sitting over there on the counter, and get a better sense of who I am and what I'm saying and maybe why I'm saying it than you can just from what I write. I can control what I write a hell of a lot better than I can control the background of what's going on behind me. The dog's coming through, my wife's standing here making a cup of coffee. So she says hi, by the way. So I'd like you to think about posting a reply like this one in this kind of media that talks to me and your classmate, singular. There are two of us. There are two of you and me. Just so we can get a sense of who you are and who we're talking to through the rest of the class. Going forward, if you're going to use video, I want it to be for a reason that is richer, or a reason that makes video a better choice than print. It conveys more information. It lets you integrate more content. It lets you add additional images or stories or pictures or sounds or things like that that you can't get just in writing. But for now, let's just meet and see who we are, okay? Have a good one. Talk to you later. Robinson out.